So I'd always say work out for you, find your reason, find your why, and stick at that. Because that's not a trend. It will not change unless you want it to change. You can see the Hannah Montana t-shirt creeping through. But fortunately it's bloody freezing, so I can't even show it off. Today we're going to discuss something. A workout-based video, which I'm kind of looking forward to because I actually really enjoy these videos. They're probably amongst my favourite videos to make because I love just the fitness things. I love talking about working out. I love just talking about training and providing tips and tricks that could hopefully help you with your training. And we're actually going to look at the Ultimate Hourglass Workout by Krissy Cela. Hourglass workouts are something I've kind of covered briefly here and there throughout my time on YouTube, I'll say. But I've never actually really delved into a workout that is essentially tailored to enhance that hourglass shape. And for example, in this workout, it's very much an upper body workout, which Krissy is saying is a means of promoting a slightly wider frame, bigger back, bigger shoulders, etc., to help enhance that hourglass figure and promote what she calls the X frame, which is actually a very common terminology in bodybuilding. X frame referring to kind of wide upper back and big legs, so obviously you look like an X. So we're going to discuss that today, and I'm actually quite looking forward to it. But before we do so, we obviously need to do the bits and bobs that need to be done. You may hear some buzzing. Someone is doing some gardening outside, and I'm not happy about it. If at any point throughout this entire video you decide you actually like the video, and maybe even learn something from the video, then I would really appreciate it if you did either like the video or potentially click the red button down below to subscribe to the channel, and maybe even tickle that bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then drop it down below in the comment section, because at the end of every video I do comment question of the week, and I shall answer one of the questions next week. Now we're into December. It's Christmas headband every video for December. So here we are. That's better. Now it's in frame and also in my ear. Also throwing out there now, don't forget, TFNL Growth Guide PDF is essentially the hypertrophy handbook is coming on December 19th, and TFNL Group Coaching, which is going to be a subscription service that's going to be very, very cheap, is coming on hopefully January 2nd. So keep an eye out for more information surrounding those bits and bobs coming soon. So we're going to go through the workout and we're going to discuss some bits and bobs. Well, not only am I going to give my input on the workout itself and maybe a few technical things that I believe could be changed to improve the workout, I'm also going to provide you with an alternative workout that you might want to tickle.
Whilst I think it's amazing that people are looking for workouts and they identify workouts with specific names such as hourglass workout, I just want you to understand that this whole hourglass figure, this whole heroin chick body, these are just trends. Like, these are trends, guys.
Actually, very fair point. I completely agree. I've spoken about this a few times on the channel. Body trends and beauty trends do change very quickly, and essentially if you align your training to align with those trends, first of all, the trend is going to change, so the people that you may have been trying to please are not going to be pleased, and you may also end up risking not pleasing yourself because you may be working towards a goal that you don't necessarily want to achieve for you, but you might want to achieve because you feel you're pressured to do so by the media or society. So I'd always say work out for you, find your reason, find your why, and stick at that, because that's not a trend. It will not change unless you want it to change. Krissy actually goes on to speak about how this workout is essentially tailored to enhancing that X frame like I spoke about at the start, and that's very much like a wider upper body. Not saying everybody wants to achieve that, but these movements directly will not make your upper body wider. What essentially that refers to is the development of muscle mass in certain areas. Today we're actually looking at the chest, the back, and the shoulders. She states this workout is fit for purpose, and that purpose is primarily hypertrophy. So there are a few things I actually want to address about that, which I'll do so later down the line. So the first movement I'm going to do is actually a superset. So we're going to do a lying bench press, which is essentially a flat dumbbell press. Superset with a lat pull down. So the dumbbell press itself is actually really nice. Oftentimes people flare their elbows. You see Krissy is keeping her elbows nice and tucked quite close to the body. This is good. I've mentioned it a few times. I actually mentioned in my chest kind of growth guide video I did a while back, where the pec fiber orientation essentially runs down at 45 degrees. Therefore it makes sense to press with your arm more tucked and closer to the body, anywhere from, let's say, 45 to 30 degrees, anywhere along those lines, whatever's comfortable for you. It's very easy to flare. That's going to really limit your range of motion. You tuck those elbows in, you're going to find it much nicer on the shoulders and also probably much more effective for the pecs. The key thing there is going as low as you can go. This movement is very much a lengthened position dominant movement, which means the majority of tension is going to be at the bottom here. Stop when you need to stop, but I would really encourage going as low as you possibly can go, within reason and within your mobility allowances.
When you're gripping the lat pull down, make sure that your thumbs are out of the grip. The reason being is because you're going to ensure that your forearm is not pulling the weight for you.
I have people say to me quite a lot, Harry, when I'm doing any row or pull down motions, should I grip the bar with my thumb or should I take the thumb off? And when you're looking at the back itself, although you may actually get greater sensation from doing one or the other, how you're working the back, whether you're gripping with the thumb or without the thumb, does not change. Your thumb placement has no relationship to how effectively you're going to be working the back through those ranges of motion, because again, this has no impact on the range of motion you're going through. But when it comes to the forearm involvement side of things, to eliminate that or to reduce that as much as possible, I personally would strap up, because your forearms are more often than not likely going to be a limiting factor when you do a lot of these movements where grip is involved. If you reduce the grip involvement as much as possible by wearing wrist straps, you may then therefore reduce the involvement of the forearms, which could then further allow you to take the target musculature, being the muscles of the back in this case, closer to failure without something else limiting that or hindering that by being a weak link. So for example, the forearms. Whether you thumb over or thumb under with straps or whatever, that's completely up to you. Personally, I actually prefer what Krissy is doing here, where I kind of thumb over, but that is literally just preference. It's something I've done for a long time. And the lat pull down itself is actually a really good movement. I'm a big fan. It's very basic, it's very simple, but I'm a big fan of the movement. Not only are we working a lot of the upper back muscles, we're actually getting some additional lat work throughout this movement. So the top half of the movement here, about to there. So that first half or so, it is going to be very much upper back dominant. As soon as we actually start breaking that 90-degree mark and we go beyond that 90-degree part where we're kind of adducting the humerus, the upper arm here, closer to the body like so, the lats are going to get more involved. So it's almost, it starts out quite upper back dominant, and as the movement progresses and we get past that 90-degree point, the lats are going to start getting more involved and active throughout this movement to help finish off that movement. So yes, the lat pull down is very effective for both the upper back and the lats. It largely depends how you do it, the grip you adopt, and the portion of the movement you're actually going through. And now we're actually moving on to a dumbbell shoulder press. So the first thing here is primarily preference, but my preference, for example, would be to kick this bench back a bit. So typically I would want the bench to be about 60 degrees or so, because I find that puts me in a slightly better position to get a greater range of motion when doing shoulder press movements. Range of motion really is preference here. Personally, what I would favor is coming down as low as you possibly can and then driving obviously all the way up. Your arm positioning is going to be an interesting one. I have mentioned this before. You can either press with a kind of flared elbow, or if you are finding any shoulder discomfort during that, you can actually try tucking the elbow in a bit, so you're pressing down at 45 degrees, which may allow you to go through the range of motion to the shoulder, so the full range of motion, a bit more comfortably. Neither is right or wrong. I'm simply stating that you can press like so, but if that feels a bit spicy and uncomfortable, tuck those elbows in, you should be laughing. So with the barbell row, again, over on hand grip is kind of completely up to you. So typically when you go overhand grip, that's going to encourage the elbows to flare a bit more, whereas if you go underhand grip, you may actually find it easier to keep those elbows close to your body. So what we would kind of tickle with that is if you are flaring the elbows more with an overhand grip, it may place a bit more emphasis on the upper back muscles, whereas if you are going underhand grip and tucking the elbows a bit more, thus keeping the elbows close to the body, it may actually place a bit more emphasis on the lats. So you could almost alter it depending on what you're trying to achieve here. Krissy's obviously adopted an underhand grip to help keep those elbows close to the body, which again, like I said, is going to place a bit more emphasis on the lats. She says bend over to about 45 degrees. Personally, I would bend over as much as you can, within reason. I'm not saying try and get your head to the floor, but typically I would say get as parallel to the floor as possible. The other thing to remember is you don't need to bring your arms beyond the body, and I'm going to discuss that for the next back exercise. You'll see. So that's it. So Krissy doing well. So driving the elbows back and down, so really driving those elbows towards those hips. Especially if you're looking at working the lats, you really do want to drive those elbows towards the hips. So you are obviously keeping everything tight and close to the body, therefore placing as much emphasis on the lats as possible. I think the barbell row is good movement, but if you're like really optimizing the building of muscle, the barbell row probably isn't a movement I would probably tickle myself, because there are a lot of other limiting factors you need to consider. When you're kind of rowing quite heavy, eventually your lower back will likely fatigue before your lats do. Therefore, because they're fatiguing before the target musculature, you're actually then limiting the effectiveness of that movement on the target musculature. So because the lower back is giving out before the lats, you are limiting how closely you can take those lats to failure, therefore limiting how effective that movement is for the lats. So again, it's just things to consider when you are doing any kind of like row variation. I would typically look for some kind of support or some means of reducing lower back involvement as much as possible, and also core involvement too, which obviously includes the lower back, but then goes into the abdominal region as well, etc, etc. She is doing this movement primarily probably to target the lats, which is why we've adopted a neutral grip here. Again, a grip that allows you to keep the elbows close to the body. So underhand and neutral grip typically allow you to keep your elbows closer to the body, therefore are commonly used for like lat to dominant rows, etc, etc. That being said, the reason why I would favour a neutral grip over an underhand grip, the underhand grip may actually bring in the biceps a bit more into it, which could actually make them a potential limiting factor. If you have the choice between neutral or underhand grip for row variations, I would favour the neutral grip because it may reduce bicep involvement and reduce how many limiting factors could be preventing you from taking the lats to their intended reps in reserve, so proximity to failure. The first thing here, the grip. So it's a very narrow handle. Fine, absolutely fine, there's no issue at all. Because it's quite narrow, it does limit range of motion slightly and does actually encourage you to somewhat flare out slightly. Imagine the exact same handle, but about shoulder width apart. Again, that's going to allow you to shorten the lats a bit more effectively and may actually allow you to keep the elbows a bit more tucked in close to the body, thus increasing how effective it is for the lats as well. Again, not everyone has this, but if you do have an option to kind of get a wider neutral grip that's about shoulder width, I would definitely recommend it. And what I said about the elbows passing the body applies here. You see how Krissy's elbows and upper arm are going beyond the body. So the lats are at their fully shortened position, probably around here or so, when the upper arm is in line with the body. Anything beyond that point actually brings in the muscles of the mid-back. So this is why I kind of mentioned about the barbell row as well. The lats themselves actually have a really short range of motion. Like I said, it is literally to the point in which your upper arm is in line with the body. So you don't need to take it any further than that if you don't want to. Obviously, if you do want to for other muscles like the mid-back, etc, like I said, you can, but I'm just saying if you really look at the lats, you don't need to. This additional momentum is not really going to help the lats do more or anything like that. You're essentially maybe even reducing how effective it is for the lats by getting momentum from other muscles. So like I said, I would actually either stay in that lent forward position or stay upright. Don't swap between. So with the lateral raise, there are two things we want to focus on. We want to keep the arms as straight as possible, and we want to be raising out about 30 to 45 degrees in front of us into the scapular plane. Rather than out to the side, we want to be coming like so, as straight as possible, almost like you're trying to reach your hands to the walls in front of you, or maybe even the corners of the room perhaps. Doing so will place a bit more emphasis on the kind of side delts that you're looking at targeting here, but it will also reduce how involved the traps are. A lot of the time when people do side raise variations, they often say, oh, my traps are really hurting, or they're getting really sore, or they're working a lot. Straight arms, scapular plane, it will reduce how much they're getting involved, which is exactly what we want. Yeah, I've said this before, I think Krissy's training has come on leaps and bounds over recent months and years, and it's good to see. I think she's making huge improvements, and I think she's helping a lot of people by doing so, which is fantastic. The information she's providing and promoting is definitely a lot better than it used to be, and I think that's brilliant to see, and I love it. First of all, you know my thoughts on supersets. When you look at really building as much muscle as possible, straight sets where you just do standard sets are going to be far better than supersets in a lot of cases, unless obviously you're limited for time, etc, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to restructure this workout to make it a bit more effective, in my opinion. We're going to go dumbbell bench press and seated row here. Again, because we're limited what we can pair, we're just going to throw those two together because the pairings following this are going to be for an intended purpose, as you'll see. We're then going to go into the lateral raise, followed by the dumbbell shoulder press, where we're going to be working the side delts in their shortened position, followed by the anterior delts and arguably some of the side delts in more of a lengthened position afterwards. Obviously, like I said before, we typically fatigue in the shortened position first, so for that reason I'm going to prioritize the shortened position dominant movements, although the dumbbell shoulder press is going to be the movement in which you shift the most weight on, but it doesn't necessarily mean we should prioritize it. Following that, we're then going to go to the lat pull down, followed by and superset with the bent over row. The reason why we're doing that is obviously we've got two kind of back dominant movements here, upper back and lats for the lat pull down, both in the shortened position. Bent over row is going to be hopefully more lat dominant if we go with the underhand grip, again it's shortened position. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw the bent over rows at the very end when the back is most fatigued. Therefore the lower back fatigue we're going to accumulate from the bent over row is going to have less of an impact on our ability to take the back to failure because the back is already fatigued. So we're kind of closing the gap and reducing how much of a limiting factor that lower back might be because the lats fatigue is coming down to kind of match it to some extent, if that makes sense. And that's probably how I'd run it. Again, there are 100 different ways to run it, but that's how I'd run it. Ideally, we wouldn't have any supersets and we would split them as straight set movements. So dumbbell press followed by rows, followed by seated shoulder press, followed by lat pull down, followed by side raise, followed by bent over rows or something along those lines. But again, I want to keep it as close to this workout as possible with a few adjustments to make it, like I said, arguably potentially even better in my opinion. If it were up to me and I was actually restructuring the workout with new movements entirely and no supersets, I'd probably choose 5. I'd choose a chest press variation, let's say like an incline chest press. Then I'd choose maybe like an iliac pull down variation. So we've gone lengthened position chest to shortened position lat. Then I consider something like a pec deck fly where we've gone shortened position chest. Then I consider like a chest supported dumbbell incline row. So we're looking at upper back. And then I consider again like a cable lateral raise or cable side raise variation variation. So we're then looking at side delts. That's how I'd run it, is chest back, shoulders. No, I think, like I said earlier, I think Krissy's doing great stuff, and she's really improved in recent months, and I can't wait to see her improve even more. Comment question of the week this week is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be one that many of you might actually be pondering yourselves. Is muscle size always an indication of strength? I've just seen a couple of boys about 16-ish. One has fairly big muscles in his arms, but was struggling when single arm rowing, an amount that I usually do as a girl who is older than him. The simple answer is no. Muscle size isn't necessarily always an indication of strength. Although bigger muscles have the potential to be stronger muscles, that doesn't necessarily mean they are. I know people who are significantly bigger than me that lift less than me. So one of my closest friends, Jason, who used to be in the videos way back when, he is significantly lighter than me and smaller than me, but he deadlifts a bit more than me. There are many things to think about. One of those things could be leverages. He has very long arms, I have very short arms, therefore my leverage is a bit more favourable for the bench press and pressing movements. His leverages might be a bit more favourable for deadlift variations and whatnot. That is it. That is a video. Like I said throughout this video, if you decide you like the video and maybe even tolerate just me being here in general, then please let me know you like the video by liking the video, and maybe even by clicking the red button down below to subscribe to the channel, and potentially even tickling that bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you too have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then please do consider dropping it down below in the comment section for a comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating this very annoying tingly bell in my ears, and thank you for tolerating the video.